Questions are allowed, but public comment is not allowed. If you wish to ask a question, please fill out a comment card and hand that card to a deputy. Your participation is welcomed and appreciated. So this meeting is going to go a little different than normal. We'll have our workshop where we will review our draft agenda. We'll have a presentation on civics and ESC services. But at 10 o'clock, no matter where we are in that agenda, we're going to recess from our workshop, open the special meeting to take care of a vote that we need to make, and then we'll return back to our agenda workshop. All right, so Mr. Broski. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Ms. Hanson is joining us by phone. Ms. Hanson, can you hear us?
She may be muted.
Oh, is that muted?
She may be.
She muted herself.
Ms. Hanson, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gilhousen.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Mr. Broski, the floor is yours.
Okay, so on top of all of that, we have really 3 items that we need to do here today. And then, as Ms. Gilhousen pointed out, there's a storm coming, and so I appreciate the meeting ending before noon. Emergency management is meeting at that time to discuss on that particular issue. So I'm just trying to set parameters here this morning. So I want to take the liberty of kind of switching up the order if we could. First up is our civics program presentation. We have Mary Owen here talking about social studies in Clay County. While she sets up, just kind of tell a little story to the board, which is, if you remember, we did this for reading. And one of the things that I heard from the majority of the board was they appreciated hearing the things that were happening in our schools, provided greater context for what was going on. This way, when constituents would call you and talk to you about various things in school, you would know this information, be able to highlight it a little bit better. Also good for people that may be watching this that are from the public would hear those kinds of things, because one of the things that I occasionally hear is that, hey, we should do more patriotic things in schools. And, you know, you're talking to a guy that lives and breathes that all the time. And so kind of explaining that and what we actually are doing in schools and our success with this would be important. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary, and then she'll answer any questions right after this brief presentation.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here this morning to share some of the great things that are happening in our social studies world, and what better time to do that than Founders Week, right in the middle of that. It's great. So like Mr. Broski mentioned, my name is Mary Owen, and I am the K-12 Social Studies Specialist, and I've been in this role for the past 3 years, and before that was a part of the district social studies team as a coach. And before that, I taught civics for many years at Lakeside Junior High School. Our K-12 social studies team consists of myself and one other coach, Stephanie Navarro, and together we support all of our elementary, junior high, and high schools. So, in order to continue leading the state in social studies education and to increase achievement in social studies, we have to be very intentional about our goals and how we're going to continue leading social studies in the state. And so we have 3 social studies priorities, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about each of them throughout my time. But just to kind of give you a brief overview, they're all rooted in intentionality. So our priorities all coincide and align with our district vision and our district focus of being really intentional. And so we do that by supporting our teachers when intentionally planning lessons and tasks and assessments that are aligned and rooted in our benchmarks. And we do that also by sharing resources to help engage our students in the learning and the doing of social studies. In social studies, there are a lot of opportunities for our students to read, for our students to write, speak, and listen. Those are all the 4 elements of literacy. And as social studies educators, we are also reading teachers as well. And then our final priority is intentionally cultivating civics engagement. So really pushing and encouraging civic mindedness in our students. So these are our priorities. We want to talk a little bit about how we get there. So we're going to focus on the first one, intentionally planning benchmark aligned tasks and assessments. So we want our teachers to make sure that the lessons and the assessments that they're creating are rooted in the benchmarks. They've got to have curriculum support. And so Stephanie and I create our curriculum guides, our pacing guides for our teachers, and we update those every year to align with our teachers' needs and to align with new Florida Department of Education updates. Like, for example, personal finance and money management is a brand new course. And so I had the opportunity to go to a training over the summer with the state and came back and was able to use that information to create our new curriculum guide for that course. And you guys also in your folders that I believe Kelly passed out have a sample curriculum guide for civics. It's actually one unit from our civics curriculum guide, but you can kind of see how all of those are set up. We provide obviously the benchmarks and key vocabulary. We also include vetted resources for our teachers to use, as well as pacing. We do include teacher tips and just based on teachers' experience in the classroom with all of our different content areas. We also include misconceptions that students might have just based on their own experience and how to address that. We also survey our teachers every year we want to make sure, because this is their tool, that this is aligned with what they need as educators. So we survey them at the end of the year, and we also bring together a committee of teachers to help us update, if necessary, those curriculum guides. And in addition to curriculum support, we also in social studies have a lot of required instruction that is statutorily mandated. And so here is an example, just kind of an overview of all of the many required instruction recognitions that we have in social studies throughout the year. September is pretty heavy, and we'll do a September recap towards the end so you can kind of see what our students are doing and engaging in social studies this month. So for required instruction, Stephanie and I curate and vet many resources and lesson plans and create many lesson plans to share with our teachers. And really we just want to make sure that our teachers feel comfortable and confident in teaching to the requirements of that statute. And so we create hyperdocs. These are a couple of examples for Hispanic Heritage Month, Asian American Pacific Islander History Month, and all of our monthly recognitions include a hyperdoc that has resources, it has information about the statute, and background about that recognition. That is shared with teachers and administrators. All right, so looking at our second priority, intentionally engaging students in evidence-based practices. So that curriculum support is great. It's extremely helpful for our teachers, but we can't just give them the curriculum guide and then walk away. So we support our teachers in a variety of ways. So one way we do that is by providing individual and team-based coaching support. So that might look like us sitting side by side with a teacher in lesson planning, or doing a lesson reflection on a previous lesson. It might include us modeling the lesson, or also taking a teacher to an experienced classroom teacher to visit them doing those strategies as well. And we also team up with our administrators who are over social studies, and we talk about the needs of their school and their team, and we work with them to create professional learning around their school improvement goals. So this is an example of last week. We were at Oakleaf Junior High, and we were working with their social studies team around increasing engagement in their classrooms. In addition to that, we also provide professional learning community, or PLC, support. So Stephanie and I have actually intentionally identified one junior high and one high school apiece that we support each quarter. And so every other week during PLC time, we are there side by side to help guide that team through these key questions, this PLC cycle. And we also provide a lot of professional learning opportunities throughout the year. We actually have one happening right now that Stephanie is at. So this is one of our favorite things to prepare and plan for, is when we get to see all of our teachers in one space and learning from each other. And everything that we provide our teachers is all rooted back in the One Clay vision. Everything comes back to that. We also collaborate very closely with our partners at the Florida Department of Education, especially our Civics regional coaches. And they have come out, we've invited them to share information at our collaboratives with our teachers in Civics. And they've also recently reached out and requested that I share our curriculum or our pacing guide for Civics to use as a model for other districts.
And you said no, right? No.
I did ask permission first. I asked permission first.
No, it's good to share.
Right, sharing is caring, right? All right, and we also want to make sure that we're increasing rigor and engagement in our non-tested areas. So a lot of our courses, even 6th grade world history, 7th grade U.S. history, and 10th grade world history, there are a lot of topics that overlap and kind of lay a foundation for our tested areas. And so we really are modeling kind of what we want to see in our tested areas with those groups as well. So we're extremely proud of our civics and U.S. history teachers, but we don't want the onus to kind of fall solely on them. And so if we can increase that rigor and get our students exposed to
Thank you, Ethan.
get our students exposed to the type of EOC style questions that they're going to see, or get them exposed in digging into primary sources and doing analysis of images. We really are kind of modeling that that's the expectation for all content areas in social studies. So on the screen is an example of a test question that civic students may see on their EOC. And this question is a higher order question. It requires multiple steps. It's not just a yes or no or a true or false or matching. It requires digging into this excerpt from a primary source and then applying their understanding to it. So, and you also have a couple of other examples in your folder on the right side if you'd like to look at those. But what we've done is we want to make sure that the first time our students see questions like this is not on the EOC. So we have created little formative checks, 3 to 5 questions for our benchmarks that look just like this, that are styled after the EOC. Our 6th grade world history, our middle school U.S. history, and our 10th grade world history have these as well. So once again, we're trying to model that expectation so that our students don't get to a tested class and this is the first time they're seeing those questions. We also want to ensure that they are, like I said, digging into all of the skills necessary to be strong social studies students. And a big part of that is diving into primary sources and analyzing secondary and primary sources. So one way we do that is through document-based questions, or DBQ. We have DBQs starting in 4th grade. And basically, students are given kind of an overarching guiding question, and they're given resources of primary sources, charts, images, and they are required to dig into those sources and really it builds their critical thinking. We're teaching them, how to think critically by digging into each of those sources to answer that guiding question. All right, and our final priority, as a former civics teacher, I know this is so near and dear to my heart in cultivating civics engagement in our students. And so we are so lucky that we live in a county with a lot of great local government partners who are willing to support that same goal. They share in that same commitment to engage our students. So the Clerk of Courts, for one, is extremely helpful. Mary Justino and I talk very frequently about all of the ways that we can collaborate to support our students and our teachers. So just last week, Clerk Green came to Ridgeview High School and spoke to some government students about the 6th Amendment and the clerk's role, the Clerk of Courts' role in our local government as well. And last year, we actually had the opportunity to go alongside some criminal justice students at Clay High School to sit in on the 5th District Court of Appeals oral arguments. And so after that, our students actually had the opportunity to ask the panel of judges' questions, and the attorneys who were there as well. So it was a great learning experience for them. Yes, very cool. And in addition to supporting our students, the Clerk of Courts also, we team up with them every in-service day, and they provide an in-service day session where our teachers get to go and explore the historic triangle. They also get to explore the courthouse and have a question and answer session with one of our judges to kind of learn a little bit more about some of the landmark Supreme Court cases that their students are going to be tested on. And the Clay Archives, which is a part of the Clerk of Courts, is also a tremendous help, especially in creating and curating primary and secondary sources related to local history. So the end of May, we designate that final week as Clay History Week. And actually, the Board of County Commissioners dedicates the whole month. They proclaim it Clay History Month. And so I have had the opportunity the last couple of years to go to the Board of County Commissioners meeting and speak on behalf of the district about our collaboration with the Clerk of Courts and the Clay Archives when they announced the proclamation for Clay History Month. So that's been very exciting. And Vichy Garrett, who is from the the Clay Archives, has also given us a tremendous, like a wealth of resources dedicated to Clay history, where we have combined them and put them into a DBQ for our history students. So during that last week of May, during Clay History Week, they're digging in, once again, thinking critically, going through some resources to determine what had the greatest impact on Clay County's development. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what students are able to pull from those resources. And something else that we have in the works too is this display. So in Oakleaf, a long time ago, there was actually a Blue Angel training field where OVE in Phase 1 Amenity Center is today. So it was a Blue Angel training field, and through the work of the Clay Archives, they've uncovered quite a bit of sources, primary sources, images, and just some background to the importance of that training ground. And so this display, which is all about the Blue Angels and its impact on local history at Oakleaf, is going to be at Oakleaf High School the week the Blue Angels are in town. And so students in the aeronautics program, ROTC, and social studies students will have the opportunity to visit that display. And fingers crossed, and Mary Justino is in the process of hopefully trying to recruit either a pilot or a representative from the Blue Angels while they're in town to speak to our students. So, like I said, fingers crossed that that happens.
That'd be so neat.
Yeah. All right, and we also team up very closely with the Clay Supervisor of Elections. So in our U.S. history and government classes, once again, by state statute, there are some requirements when it comes to elections, and that includes students learning how to use and what is the uniform election ballot, the primary and general election ballot. And so we have incorporated this into our curriculum around the time of Voters Registration Day, the National Day. And so this is where you'll see a lot of schools, all of our schools actually, teaming up with the Clay Supervisors of Election to hold a voters registration drive. I think there's some happening today and tomorrow. Usually it's the last week of September. So here are some examples from last year: Ridgeview High School, Orange Park High School, and like I said, they come to all of our schools. We have a very close collaboration with them, and encourage our students to go ahead and register or pre-register to vote. And we are also teaming up with them as well in Double Click Democracy to hold a mock presidential election this year. We already have a lot of schools that are signed up to take part in that, and the Clay Supervisor of Elections is going to donate I voted stickers so we can give those to our students. Yes, ma'am.
Is this only during lunch?
So it is up to each school to decide. Some schools will do it during lunch. Some schools will host something in the media center. It is a collaboration between the school leaders, the teachers, and student leaders to kind of determine what that's going to look like on their campus. So kind of the standard expectation is that the Supervisor of Elections is on campus and encouraging. There's announcements, signs, they have a booth up, but some schools go a little bit above and beyond. Yes, with resources.
So, I just have a suggestion.
Mhm.
If anyone cares, but I had talked to, or I had, was present at a presentation that they put on. And I know I had talked to Mr. Brodsky about this as well, as getting them very active in our schools.
Yes.
I know we have the partnership, and I know that we've done stuff in the past. But I think the message was we needed to do more than just a cafeteria. So like the media center, because they need more time and they want to contact more of our student base. And they only have a certain amount of time to stand in line, eat, and then are they going to actually go up there and speak, because now they have time to speak to their friends and whatnot.
Right.
So I guess maybe in the future, thinking outside of the lunchroom,
Yeah.
because that was the message I was getting, that if we wanted to actually make change and get early voting, or getting people registered to vote and understanding the process more,
Right.
they needed more time than just the cafeteria.
Absolutely, I completely understand, and so that might be something for next year for us to talk with leaders about too, because that's definitely going to be a kind of a school-based decision on how that is going to look logistically on campus, but I definitely agree, and we'll share that. Thank you. Thank you. Alright, and so we've probably seen this graphic a few times since June, but we are so proud to say that in 7th grade, our 7th grade civics students ranked first in the entire state. U.S. history, which is 11th grade, ranked 4th overall, and overall combined social studies is 2nd. But you know, these numbers are great, but let's dive a little deeper into the data that is giving us those numbers. So in social studies or civics, our overall proficiency was 14 points above the state, and U.S. history was 13 points above the state this past year. And over the 3 years, we see we are consistently growing, and we're consistently above the state. And we've had a lot of schools, including schools that are already high performing, making significant gains as well. And so looking at our subgroup performance for civics, our Black and African American and students with disabilities subgroup is 19 points above the state average. Once again, you know, that's to a lot of support and collaboration between the ESC team and our team as well. And then our ELL, or ESOL population, 37 points above the state average.
Wow.
And U.S. history looks very similar. 20 points above, 22, and then 40 points above.
40 points.
Yes. So we know with continued collaboration with our ESC team, with our ESOL team, that those numbers are going to continue to grow. All right, so just a quick September recap. Like I said, September is full of required instruction. And so we, first we had 9/11 Heroes Day, and we were really excited to see just how many of our students and staff wore red, white, and blue to show their patriotism that day. And so in civics and government, they are statutorily required to have at least 45 minutes of instruction around 9/11. They actually have a brand new benchmark that is new this year that is all related and tied to 9/11. So Stephanie and I went there and we created some age-appropriate lessons to kind of ready-made lessons to share with our teachers, because I know that that can be kind of a difficult topic, especially for those of us that are, you know, obviously old enough to remember where we were at that time. And it's interesting teaching students who were not alive. And so we want to make sure that the lessons we provide are all age appropriate, and that once again teachers feel confident and comfortable teaching that information. And not only do we provide lessons for our civics and government because it's required, but we also curated lessons and resources for our K-12, the other grade levels as well. And so here is an example of one of our teachers at Orange Park Junior, kind of using one of the lessons that we provided as well. And I love his American flag shirt. All right, and also Hispanic Heritage Month started last week, and it goes through October 15th. And so once again, we create a hyperdoc of resources. We've also included for administrators to share a weekly announcement, just a weekly biography of Hispanic American who has made an made an impact on our country. Some of them deal with the military, so the first Latina female U.S. military pilot, botanists, we've got some doctors in there, so each week our administrators share that short little biography with their school. And Founders Week, which is right now. So once again, by state statute, our 5th grade, middle school, and 11th grade U.S. history students are required to have 3 hours of instruction around the Declaration of Independence around this time. So in Clay County, we've kind of combined a few recognitions, including Constitution Day and Celebrate Freedom Week, and we've made it Founders Week. And so during this time, our students are digging into primary sources. They look at excerpts from the Constitution, from the Declaration. They're really using those social studies skills that we mentioned earlier, the document analysis, and to kind of dive a little more and immerse themselves in those founding documents. And I will probably see you guys in December again as well for the K-5 art contest winners to recognize them. And this year our theme is America's Symbols, so that art contest is going to kind of revolve around that. And so in addition to creating lessons and resources around the Constitution and the Declaration, we also each year update our theme and provide resources that are related to the theme as well. Well, thank you all so much for allowing me to share a little bit about what's going on in social studies. Yes, ma'am.
Mary, you don't have a test for us, because I know. There's some DBQ questions right here.
There's some test questions.
And
Yes.
DBQs down in the elementary grades down?
Yes, 4th,
Huge.
5th, 6th, middle
Huge
school.
improvement
Yep.
from teaching social studies in the past.
I love that. We also have, history labs
I
too.
see all of these aids now that teachers have, and seriously,
I appreciate
makes you want
it.
to go back into the classroom, but not until after July 1st or 2020.
Alright, well, thank you all, I appreciate it.
This was excellent, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So let me start by saying Mary Owen's a rock star, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Right away. And I also will say that it was kind of funny, I was watching Mary give a presentation, I was also looking at Kelly.
Yeah, really.
He was just beaming with pride, because Kelly used to have that position before she took this position. So kind of interesting. A couple points I'd like to make, like being successful and being first in civics and second in U.S. history overall, and fourth in U.S. history, second overall. That just doesn't happen, right? There's an organized plan behind that. And really, for me, the key behind that is having a aligned curriculum that's rigorous in nature, plus strong instruction, makes that happen. That doesn't happen without support of that. In other words, if you didn't have a Mary Owen and other people behind the scenes providing those lessons and doing those things, that doesn't happen, right? We all know that teachers are have very little time. It's a very challenging task with a lot going on. Figuring out content that's aligned with the benchmarks is a whole thing. Instead, we pretty much provide that to teachers and say, here you go, right? That's really the key to success, is to have people behind the scenes working on that, whether it's Mary, Stephanie, or the coaches that are working on actual instruction in the classroom. All those things are intentional, right, and by design to happen that way. So that's why I was going to make a joke about how we kick the rest of the state's butt as much as the Jaguars got beat last night. I'm a little sore about that already. But really, when you look at the numbers, you can't help but make that analogy. So, being very competitive, I looked at the numbers and I thought, we kick some serious butt across the state. But it's because we provide teachers with the resources to do that and an organized plan to make that happen. So the other part that Mary spoke to that I would like to bring out is just teachers have to teach the benchmarks. If you're looking, hey, what do you, like sometimes you'll hear things like teachers are teaching this, teaching that. teachers are teaching what the benchmark is. The benchmark is actually decided by the state of Florida. It's given to us, you then teach the benchmark. So the analogy would be, if a teacher's not teaching the benchmark, and they're teaching something else because they like that topic, or whatever the case might be, what's happening is you're actually hurting students in performance. So the analogy I would give you is, if you wanted to teach somebody to shoot a three-point shot in basketball, right? You wouldn't give them a soccer ball and say, go ahead, figure it out, right? You would show them how to do it at the three-point line. They would practice rigorously to make that happen. So what happens to teachers is sometimes they don't follow the curriculum guides that are given and the structure that's provided. Sometimes, because I was a history teacher, so I can speak from experience, sometimes you kind of go off the script a little bit, and then that creates a little bit of angst. Clearly, it's facts, not Facebook, that we lead the state in social studies and civics. A lot to be proud of. Mary and her team, of two. Mary and Stephanie do a fantastic job.
Constitutions.
Yes, so that I forgot to mention is another support that the Clerk of Courts provides us as well. So, yes.
To all seventh graders?
To all of our students that they interact with, civics and government usually, yes. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on the list, another area to kind of highlight, which is exceptional student education. We have Dr. Sanders here to give the presentation. Let me just start off by saying increasing our knowledge about ESC and ESC services would certainly benefit the entire organization of all of us, because one of the things that I've noticed is that parents love their children, right? So just imagine raising a child in today's age. Many of us are older, or some of us have children right in the school system. But you get the idea that the world's a tough place to raise a child. So imagine a child that has difficulty learning. That kind of adds to the difficulty as a parent. And sometimes you see that, because I know sometimes we'll hear from parents that are frustrated, but realize they're in a tough spot, right? As a parent, they're trying to figure it out too, and maybe don't know the services that are provided and the context of those services. So here to do that is Dr. Sanders.
All right, good morning. I'm so glad to be here with you guys just to tell you a little bit about our program and what we do in the Exceptional Student Education Department. Mr. Broski did say we needed to be done by noon. I could talk about this topic all day long. So I was very intentional about trying to keep it concise. So if at the end there are things that you wish I would have covered, feel free to let me know, and I can always come back again, or we can meet individually. So I want to start by giving you guys just a little bit of information about our department by the numbers. So, the numbers change every day, but on any given day, there are about 11,000, actually I think it's a little higher now, students that we are responsible for. That includes students ages 3 through 21. That's something that a lot of the public does not know, that we are responsible. We think of our school system as K-12, but really in ESE, we are pre-K through 22. So through a student's 22nd birthday, if they have an IEP, they are able to stay and receive services. And so with that also comes this child find obligation. We are actually obligated by federal law to find students out in the community who may need services and evaluate them and help them get those services. I will say, just in case anybody doesn't realize, that 11,000 plus does include gifted. So federally, gifted is not included in special education because it's not a disability. In Florida does include gifted in exceptional student education. So I try to let you know when I'm including gifted versus when I'm not. So except for the gifted students, there are 13 eligibility areas through the IDEA. And I'm not going to list all of them, but they are eligibility areas like SLD, specific learning disabilities, OHI, other health impairment, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, IND, intellectual disabilities, DD, which is where pre-K starts, developmental disabilities. And then we have all of those therapies and things too, the speech impaired, language impaired, physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of those things. We've got our 43 district managed schools that we're responsible for, obviously. We have, I asked someone in my office to run some current numbers yesterday. We've got over 500 ESC teachers, over 500 ESC assistants. So when you think about the fact that we're talking over 11,000 students, we're talking over 1,000, really approaching 1,100 teachers who serve these students, and then our district staff. You're talking a lot of people that are being served by our department. We're also responsible not for the direct education of, but we do support our 4 charter schools and our 13 private schools that opt into our services through consultation, through compliance support, through training in some cases. And then we're also responsible for homeschool students, actually. We don't serve them, we don't go to their homes and teach them, but we do have to work with those families to develop IEPs and provide consultative services as needed for those students. All right, so what guides all of our processes for ESC starts at the federal level. We have that big federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Most of you guys have heard of that. Most people call it IDEA. Then, of course, each state is responsible for taking that IDEA federal law and coming up with their state statutes and the corresponding rules that go along with those. And so, of course, our state has done that, and there are a lot of things we have to follow within that. Trickling down, we then take IDEA, we take those state statutes and corresponding rules, and we develop our Clay County District Schools policies and procedures, and then our admissions and placement manual. And I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. So starting at the federal level, that IDEA, like I said, that's what mandates we have to serve students ages 3 through 21 to receive that special education and related services. A quote from IDEA that I think just helps sum up some of what we do, and I love this quote from not all law has nice quotes we can say, but this one is nice. It says, "Disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Improving educational results for our children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for students with disabilities." And so that's part of our goal of our department, is really given in that quote. That's why I like that. One of the things that IDEA says, and in part in that quote it alludes to it, is that students with disabilities do not belong to the ESC department. Students with disabilities are general education students first. The services they get through the ESC department are in addition to those general education services that they get. This exact slide is shown in every single professional development opportunity we have with teachers and assistants, even parents. Just as a reminder, and I'll tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years, all in Clay County. Don't plan on ever leaving Clay County. And I need this reminder sometimes. I'm a mom and I'm a special educator, and sometimes I have to remind myself that we're not talking about just special services. We're talking about what everybody else gets and specialized services. So when we look at the state statutes and corresponding rules, there are a lot of them, right? And so obviously we're not going to take time to go through all of those. We can all read, and I and my team are very well versed in all of them, and so anybody ever just wants to talk about law a little bit, we can do that. But one of the things that I found in Florida statute that I just thought was important to bring up to the board and to the public is this. That basically says, while we're providing for the education of these students, we have to, not can, but shall, utilize our regular school facilities and adapt them to the needs of our ESE students as best we can. They also these students have to be educated with students that are non-disabled. Segregation is not the go-to. Segregation, it actually says in the statute, segregation of exceptional students shall occur only if the nature or severity of the exceptionality is such that the education of the regular class with use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So there are a lot of rules that we follow when we are trying to help IEP teams make placements and find those appropriate places for all of our students. Another thing that is sometimes a misconception. Was that? Okay. Sometimes there are misconceptions that, we identify that a student might have a disability, and so we can just go ahead and start serving them. And Florida statute actually says that a student may not be given that special instruction or services through ESE unless and until they've been properly evaluated and found eligible. And so that's something that we really follow that rule in our district. We don't ever want to delay services, but we are required to go through that comprehensive evaluation process.
Excuse me, Dr. Sanders?
Yes, ma'am?
I was not provided this PowerPoint prior to the meeting for me to actually read this. And of course, with my master's in ESC and teaching ESC for nearly 20 years, this is also a love of mine. But I wanted to go back to the slide prior to where you are right now. We talked about in providing the education of exceptional students shall utilize the regular school facilities. And you go on to say that shall be educated with students who are not disabled. I wanted the board to, I have the Florida statute in front of me because I'm frantically was looking for it because I was unaware we were talking about this particular thing today. But the actual statute says, in providing education for exceptional students, the district school superintendent, principals, and teachers shall utilize the regular school facilities and adapt them to the needs of exceptional students to the extent appropriate. That is key in this statute. We are unable to probably talk about this or discuss this today. I may be asking for you to come back because this part of the law is a part of the law that has been really important for parents and teachers. It goes on to say, to the extent appropriate. I am not sure if you could forward me the procedures manual for inclusive education so that I can take a look at it. And then I'm going to have to get back with you because I actually have a whole list of how that extent appropriate works in Clay County and what parents and teachers input for how that works in Clay County. And so this particular part of this slide, like I said, had I been privy to the information ahead of time, I would have been able to provide what I would like to have provided. But the segregation of exceptional students shall occur only if the nature or severity of exceptionality is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved. So I need to find out the interpretation of this particular law, which is 1003.57, 5E, and then 5F. The extent with which Clay County utilizes this, the rubric or the parameters we have set to provide inclusive education for every student.
Yes, I could talk all day about that, Ms. Hanson, so we can certainly go into that more. Actually, where I was, let me see if I can get back to where I was just about to talk about. So we do have our Clay County policies and procedures. The state requires us to develop a policies and procedures manual. It is approved by the DOE so that they can make sure that what we are proposing, it does fall in line with statute. It is also adopted by the school board. So we can certainly get you guys a copy of that. It's in the Google Drive. We have it digital. We have it printed. We can get anyone a copy of that. It's a little light reading of, I think, 331 pages or something along those lines.
Yes, I'm particularly interested in our procedures for inclusive placement across the spectrum. as well as what we deem appropriate or not appropriate. And I guess also in considering regular education students, what's best for them, as well as our placement to our ESC students. We really want the best for all students.
Absolutely.
And so I would appreciate you forwarding everything you have on that to include your procedures manual and the BPIE. And then I'll peruse through it and gather my questions together, and maybe we could have another meeting like you said.
Sure, we can get that to you. I do believe it's also available on the DOE website. They're all public records, they're all public policies. But yeah, we can get whatever we need to get to you. So in...
Procedures, not policy, okay? Thank you.
Okay, the manual is actually called Policies and Procedures, so that's what the state calls it. So that's what we'll get you. So in that, as we're following those policies and procedures that are approved by the state and then adopted by the board, the biggest thing that we think about, right, is this individualized education plan. So when we're thinking about individual students, each of those students has an individualized education plan that addresses what services we're going to be able to provide to them from the ESC department. It also details what is appropriate for that individual student when it comes to time spent with non-disabled peers. We're actually required in the IEP to discuss the time spent with non-disabled peers. We review those at least annually. So go back to that number of 11,000-ish. At least annually. So when we talk about our ESC secretaries that are out in our schools, we're talking minimum that many meetings. But also amendments can happen. Amendment meetings can happen when requested by a parent, when needed, when requested by the school staff. Then we also have a larger reevaluation every 3 years that sometimes includes our school psychologist, sometimes includes other testing that is done to make sure that we don't need to adjust that process for that child. Interim reports or progress reports are supposed to be sent home to families every 4.5 weeks, so that coincides with our interims and our report cards.
Ms. Sanders,
Yes, ma'am.
when you talk about the 11,000 students that you serve, does that include the charter, public, or private and homeschool students that you
I believe
serve?
it does because we're pulling that number from Synergy.
Okay.
And in Synergy, they are listed.
Okay.
All right, so this is my favorite part. So how are these kids doing? How are these 11,000 kids doing? Well, they're doing really well, as you can see. We've been tracking their increase in proficiency. I have been tracking it over the last 4 years because I just finished my 4th year in this role. So just started my 5th year, September 1st. And when I look at our increase in overall proficiency, and this is on our state assessments. This is not on the alternative assessment. Those students are also doing well, but these are students who are taking the regular state assessments. We're at an 8% increase for English language arts, which is wonderful. 12% in math, 7% in science, 22% in algebra 1, 13% in geometry and biology, 12% in civics, which Ms. Owen mentioned. Our students in civics, our students with disabilities are doing well. They're doing better than the state is doing. And that is shown here as well. And then U.S. history. And so this is every single assessed area. So every single assessed area is showing an increase in proficiency. Yes, Ms. Skipper?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you did this over 4 years, but my brain works in 1 year increments.
Sure.
So I have a question. What would be average or normal across the state for in a year time frame? What would these areas go up? Like
Well,
1%?
I'll be
or
honest, many places around the state are not showing any increase, they're showing decreases. So I'm happy with any increase each year, but to see this over 4 years, I'm elated. So this is good stuff. These are kids' lives. This is changing the trajectory of kids' lives. When we look at Algebra 1, we all know that's kind of a gatekeeping class as far as, opportunities elsewhere. Are they going to be able to go to college? Are they going to be able to, pass an SAT, to be able to... for some of the things that you need that for. I mean, 22% increase in proficiency, that's good. So I have some more.
And geometry.
And
That's-
geometry,
yeah.
absolutely.
Huge.
I have some more data to share with you. So each year, the state puts out an annual performance report. It goes to Mr. Broski, and the ESE department, and actually it's ESE and student services. So in our district, it's climate and culture. We both have indicators in this. And there are 14 different indicators that the state looks at to basically grade our ESE department. And they give us a target, and then it's whether or not we met that target. And so one of the things I'm super proud of is graduation rate. They set us a target at 86.75%. We are at 98.65% for graduation rate. And Ms. Skipper, because I know how you are. How do the counties near us do? Well, one specific county near us who historically does very, very well overall, their ESC graduation rate is only 87.5. Ours is 98.65. So you might be number one in some areas, but you're not number one with ESE. Another district, large district near us, their graduation rate is only at 84%.
Okay.
So when we look at 98%, again, we're changing the trajectory of these kids' lives.
Dr.
So
Sanders, are you talking about, like they're getting a standard diploma?
everyone gets a standard diploma now.
Oh, okay.
So that changed about how long ago, Chris?
About
Teresa?
7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, everyone gets a standard diploma.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different would be if a transcript is looked at, like say you're applying to a major university, they would look at the transcript. If they see those access classes, the access points classes, that might hinder them.
Okay.
So we all get a standard diploma.
Okay.
Yes. And our assessment results, which I showed you that 4-year average before, but when we look at, one of the things that they look at our proficiency rate for students with IEPs against the grade level academic standards, and we are meeting the target in every single one of those tested areas. Again, if you pull up the LEA profile for surrounding districts, you don't see that. So we are super proud of that. Here's another thing that I'm very proud of. You guys have heard other members of our district administration talk about school improvement and how many schools we had on that ATS&I list, which is the additional targeted support and intervention needed. And this is a statewide thing. A lot of ESE directors in the state are really working on this. So last year we had 19 schools that were identified as being in that ATS&I status. In other words, needing some intervention. And that was all based on the federal index. So the federal index, they want ESE students with disabilities to be at 41% or higher. We had 19 that were not on that. We jumped right on it. We got with, like Ms. Owen said, all of the gen ed coaches and specialists, made sure that we were using the same language. We really worked hard to collaborate with Ms. Tito's office, Ms. Pickett's office, Dr. Shepard in professional learning, and really continued trying to embed ESE into everything we're doing. We were able to take 16 of those schools off the list. 2 were added, and so now we have 5. But man, to go from 19 to 5 in 1 year, it's amazing. And I will share, I shared this with Mr. Broski the other day. Last Friday, I was on a call with other directors from large districts. And one of the things that they were all worried about is this school improvement, ATS&I, what are we gonna do with these schools? Because if you're on that ATS&I list for 5 years, 6 years, by the 6th year is when you get really into that major school improvement status, which we're taking them off. We're not having them get to that long. We're far ahead of some of the other districts that I've talked to in this regard. And a lot of that has to do with Ms. Collins and her work with school improvement. So, but it's a team, we all work together. And here's just a quick show of that federal index. So, of course, we had no data from the COVID year, but our federal index went up 3 points in 21-22. We stayed the same in 22-23, maintaining that growth. And then last year we had another 4 points. So that's fantastic. Again, if you look at the federal index for many of our like districts, you will not see that growth happening. And with all of that, each year Mr. Brodsky receives a letter in the mail from the state that basically says, we've looked at all this data. We've looked at the federal index, we've looked at your proficiency, we've looked at the growth, we've looked at everything. We've looked at your graduation rate. And they tell us that we either need substantial intervention, we need assistance, or we meet requirements. So we always meet requirements. We've met requirements every year that I've been at the district. Mr. Ryan said he thinks it's pretty much been as long as he has known, which is the highest possible rating. And I just want to say, again, not my business, but not all districts get that. You can have districts in the top 5 there are districts in the top 5 who do not meet requirements for their ESE students. They may be doing well with all of their other students. They may not necessarily be doing well with their students with disabilities. So I'm super proud that not only are we a great school district, a high-performing school district with all students, but we can confidently say that we're doing the work for our students that may need the most support. So that makes me very proud. Another thing that makes me really proud is, and this is not in your slides because I added this at the last minute because I just kind of remembered, the Florida Inclusion Network is a discretionary project of IDEA, and they support us through inclusive scheduling and collaborative teaching and learning. They actually came to me last year and said, we've been watching your federal index, we've been watching your growth, and we would like to come and do some videos in Clay County to teach other people how to do what you guys are doing. And so last spring they came and we visited SBJ, S. Brian Jennings. They were one of the schools that was identified as a school that has been improving in their students with disabilities. And they videoed some teachers teaching collaboratively and now are posted on their website. We also went to Lakeside Junior, which has always had a reputation of really being very inclusive, and their data supports that what they do works. And then actually, Ms. Hope Davis, before she joined my team, and Mr. Justin James were interviewed by the Florida Inclusion Network as administrators to talk about what they do at their school. And then I was also interviewed. There are 4 videos posted on their web page, their public web page for the state, for training purposes, and they're actually using them in training. I actually, while I was sitting here waiting for my turn to come up, I saw an email come through from the Florida Inclusion Network asking to come back and do some more visits because they just are noticing all of the wonderful things that we're doing. So that feels really good. So you might ask, like, well, how are you making all these improvements? Like, you know, it's not just happenstance. It's not just luck. There's no luck to it. We're working really, really hard. We have a great team. One of the things...
I'm so sorry, I'm going to pause you for a moment while we call to order our special meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll come right back to you.
Okay, great.
Sorry. We have to start it right at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, I will now call to order the special meeting of September 24th.
Say that again?
Yes, we have to
Oh,
vote.
sorry.
Don't go.
I thought we were doing this. Elsewhere. Got it.
Ms. Honora, do you want us to open that agenda and vote on our computers?
We can, or I can vote for you, whatever your preference is.
Okay, if y'all want to switch over agendas to the special meeting agenda.
Ms. Gelhausen, if I may say something.
Sure.
Okay. At this time, the board will decide to vote to approve the course of action that has been recommended by outside counsel and the board attorney. Because of the privacy issues related to this special meeting agenda item, I would ask that the board members refrain from any specific discussion. In previously scheduled executive session, this matter involving pending litigation was discussed with the board. Now we just need a motion. We'll need a second, along with an affirmative vote to proceed with the legal team's recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion from Ms. Bola, a second from Ms. Clark. Any discussion? All in favor,
Comment.
please say. I'm sorry?
Do we need public comment?
No, there's no room for public comment. There would just be presentations from the audience after we vote. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Hanson, did you vote?
I'm sorry, it broke up a little bit. Could you guys repeat the vote for me?
Do you need,
I'm on my phone.
it was a motion for approval by Ms. Bola, a second from Ms. Clark. And this is in regard to the closed session hearing that we had. Would you like our legal team to repeat what they've said?
No, I vote yes.
Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Give everybody a second to vote online. All right, we have no yellow cards from the audience. Any comment from anybody? All right, this meeting is adjourned. I'll now reopen the workshop meeting. Ms. Sanders, sorry.
I'm back. So what I was saying, I think, right before that, was just, that these things don't happen just by chance. It does take a lot of planning, it does take a lot of coordination with other departments. One of the things that we've really been focused on over the last couple of years is this thing called high leverage practices. And so there are a group of researchers, practitioners who really did a lot of research over a span of many years to look at, okay, what works for our students with disabilities? Really we know what we would say good teaching is, we know what we do, but really what works? And they came up with 22 high leverage practices. And so what our department has really been doing is focusing on these 22 high leverage practices and making sure that every time we are sharing a strategy, every time we're sharing a program, every time we're getting together and having collaborative discussions, we're bringing it back to, does this fit with one of these 22 high leverage practices? Because we know that these things have been heavily researched. And so that's one of the things that we've been doing and that has been giving us quite a bit of lift. And fun fact, a lot of the high leverage practices for students with disabilities are also what they call exemplary practices for students who are learning English. And so under the direction of Mrs. Tito, Karen Fraser and I have been working together to because it's just one more thing, right? We don't want to have one more thing. ESC's telling us this, ESOL's telling us this. We're really trying to be cohesive and say, hey, if we can get really good at scaffolding. Scaffolding is something that is a high leverage practice for both areas. And so we're really trying to work smarter, not harder in that way. And so some of you may have heard over the last 6 months, we've changed up some of our ESC support structures. Our theme for this year for our team at the district is that we want to be the building blocks of support for our schools, and we're focusing on kind of a back to the basics of academics, behavior, and compliance. We have our new school site specialists that are out in schools. Just a little bit more about our department structure. We of course have me as the director, and then we have 3 administrators in our department who help support the work of the department. And so we have Mr. Christopher Ryan, who is here. If you'll wave, Chris, just so some of the board members might not know what you look like. Mr. Ryan is kind of our compliance guru. He is really good at problem solving when we're looking at legal matters and complaints and things like that. And he helps with a lot of other areas. Ms. Carlson is back there. Teresa Carlson is a supervisor in ESE. You saw earlier where I said, we have our 43 district managed schools, but then we also have our private charter schools, our DJJ schools, Payson AMI, FLICA, that we have to also support. And so Ms. Carlson takes the lead in that area among several other things. And then our most recent addition has been Ms. Hope Davis, who came from Lakeside Junior and had been there for 6 years as an assistant principal and comes with a lot of experience with ESE. So that's our administrative structure. And then we have us up there. We have our district health specialist. We have a specialist for each of the areas: ASD, EBD, pre-K, hospital homebound, IND, access points, speech and language, SLD and academics, transition. There are several others that are not on that list. So what we did last year is we really tried to limit the number of staff that are housed at the district office and push more of that support out into schools. You guys heard a lot about that last year from Mr. Broski. And so this shows a lot of these specialists were at the district or were itinerant and now are full-time in schools. And we have kind of zoned out the support, and this has been working well, our new structures. I mean, there are definitely some things that we're working through, some bumps in the road, but overall it's going really well. And there's no doubt that we have more support, boots on the ground at the schools. So that's good. And so speaking of that, we started tracking our support this year out in the schools. This is something that Jenny Shepard and the Professional Learning Department has done for several years. And so we just kind of piggybacked onto her form. Several other departments did as well. So we're actually able to see which schools are getting the most support, how many hours have been spent there, which of the staff members have been there to support. I can actually run a report and see where are we spending our time. When my staff is out in schools, what is it we're doing? Well, we're working on behavior. That's a thing, working through behavioral problem solving. We're also working with IEPs, helping a lot of these new teachers work on IEPs and develop those strong IEPs. Also some compliance, some documentation, some coaching work. But this helps us plan for the future. It helps us plan for professional learning opportunities, helps us plan where we need to go next. And so some of the things we do when we're out supporting the schools, we're assisting families in transitioning to the district. One thing that I do every single day is get at least one call from someone or one email that's, hey, heard great things about your district, thinking about moving here. Can you help me? My child has autism. That's usually what it is. It's usually autism, and usually I heard you guys have a great program. So we do a lot of assisting families in transitioning. We do a lot of classroom observations and recommendations. Our behavior team, they go into classrooms often and they provide recommendations to those teachers and those administrators. We do a lot of just problem-solving sessions and sessions where we're trying to make placement decisions, trying to help IEP teams make those appropriate placement decisions. We do a lot of instructional and school improvement walks with other district staff, with school leaders. We attend high-need IEP meetings. We provide a lot of training and coaching, a lot of professional learning opportunities. We work with our school leaders in ESC best practices, inclusive master scheduling, which that's another thing that has really helped all those gains that I showed you earlier, all that increase in proficiency. Having an inclusive master schedule helps with that. And I've really had a lot of support from Ms. Tito and Ms. Pickett in that over the last couple of years, getting everybody on board with using an inclusive schedule. And just problem solving with them, helping them with professional learning. I provided professional learning at Dr. Zinlet last week because Carolyn Ayers reached out and asked me if I could do that. We do that often. And then just also collaboration and support with other district departments. I mean, just in the last couple of days, I've collaborated with Mr. Boyack on safety security. I've collaborated with Ms. Pickett on several secondary things, Ms. Tito on several elementary things. Right before the board workshop, Mr. Addison came over and asked about something he's doing in building that affects our students with disabilities. We build playgrounds. We deal with transportation and talk to Randall and his team there to make sure that all of our students are being transported appropriately. And so our department really spans a lot of different areas. And then we're just constantly looking at this data. I'm a little bit of a data nerd. So, when new data is rolling in, I'm constantly looking at it, looking for those bright spots, looking for those opportunities to continue growing and to continue doing better. Because even though we have those great gains, until we're at 100% of our kids reading, that's not good enough. And so we're going to continue working through that. So I mentioned professional learning and some of the things that we've been doing. This is literally a snippet of some of the things that we've offered already this year. In addition to our big One Clay Leadership Academy that we collaborate with Dr. Shepard's team on, in our ESC Summer Summit, you guys have heard of that before, where between those two events, over 1,200 teachers attended. I mean, it's big. So far this year, though, we've offered training on instructional strategies for students on access points. We have a VE self-contained new teacher cohort that's at night. I was there last night, and our staff offers that after hours. They don't, have to, they want to support our new teachers. And then we have these quarterly Beyond the Summit ESC collaboratives where we focus on these high leverage practices and how to really get these into the classrooms and having teachers share those wonderful ideas. So we're really proud of these. I could take up about 10 more slides with all the different things that we're offering. And last but not least, another thing I'm really proud of in our department is that we revitalized our ESC Advisory Council. We had an ESC liaison for years, Ms. Jill McLeay, who provided a great service to our district for, I think, 17 years, I think is how long she was with us. But right after COVID, she decided to retire, and we were able to hire a new family liaison. Her name is Elizabeth Williams. She's a mother of a student in our district. Many of you know who she is. And she is our ESC family liaison. She goes to IEP meetings with parents if they feel like they need a third-party, neutral person to help them. She helps people go through their IEPs to help understand them. She acts as a mediator sometimes between families and us. If a family doesn't know how to come to us and ask for the help, sometimes she will do that on their behalf or sit with them while they talk to us, which is helpful. And she has been great with that. We have a monthly advisory council. Every month we meet and we move it around geographically to different areas of the district so that all people have access to this. We have some people who come once or twice a year. We have some people who come every single time. And so our next one is in October 29th at 6 p.m. at Green Cove Junior High. Last month we were at Ridgeview Elementary. And the reason we don't have one in September is because we're going to have our second annual ESC Family Engagement Night. This is something we started last year with our word of the year last year being engaged. We did our ESC Family Engagement Night just to invite families out. We have tables set up with all of our different programs. So our SLPs have a table, our academic support people have a table, our hospital homebound team has a table, and we just are there for parents to ask questions, to get to know us, to meet their program specialists for the program that their child might be in. We also invite outside vendors. So we have vendors like the Special Olympics, Challenge Enterprises, the library, the fair comes. And so this is just a night for us to get to know our families and to be there with them. And it was a great success last year, even though we were under a torrential downpour. We still had a couple of hundred people show up. Our second annual one is tonight. And so I know a couple of people have mentioned that to me, that they saw that out on social media and things. If anyone in the room wants to stop by, we'll be there from 6 to 8. And we know that it will be a great event too, just like last year. Just getting a little bit better every year. So that's all I have planned, but I'm willing to take some questions if you guys need, if there's time, Mr. Broski. Yes, ma'am.
I just have 3 comments.
Okay.
Number 1, kudos on working at the Clay County Fair.
Oh, yeah.
And Tasha Hyder
Yes.
for their silent hours.
Yep.
That has been absolutely totally successful.
Our team volunteers there.
I see it,
Yep.
and I see it on Tasha's Facebook
Yep.
and the Clay County Fair's website, and that's a positive Facebook thing, most
Yep.
definitely. Number 2, kudos to the precinct. I mean, you guys are rocking it. But the one thing that I was thinking as you were going through our numbers and how well we're doing, truly a double-edged sword, because we are doing so well, have always done well in ESC services. Yes, always room for improvement, but have always done superbly well to the point where families do tell other families, particularly in the military.
They do.
Oh no, you want to go to Clay County. Clay County is a place if you have a child with any needs, any special needs whatsoever. But having worked with children coming up from the EBD program at Argyle and being slowly integrated into the general ed, I talk about rewarding. seeing those math scores and other scores that made me very, very happy. And kudos for the training that you're doing, because I know a number, and I think it was the end of the year training last year, I know a number of teachers who were not ESC trained who came to that and walked away feeling absolutely empowered. So well done, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, anything?
So if I could,
Yes.
before you go, one of the things I like to do, I always pride myself in being from the work, so we can cut to the chase real quick. One of the things that I would want to point out about ESC is that it's a very complicated world that we live in. The AP manual is like 300 pages to give you an idea of the number of laws, regulations, and those types of things. Chris makes a living out of interpreting those things and making sure that people comply. It's a whole mechanism that's going on. I started off talking to you about the fact that raising a child in and of itself is difficult. Raising a child with a disability that's having trouble learning is a whole new level of that. And so sometimes I run into common themes, so I'd like to ask some questions from the expert. You as board members may in fact hear, okay? Have you ever had a parent come to you and say that they believe their child is ESC, but they don't qualify for ESC services?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on
Sure.
that? Because sometimes a parent
Yeah.
has difficulty with their child. Child's not learning, so they have to have a disability. Here you go.
Yep.
Make them disabled.
Absolutely. I would say at least weekly, somebody on our team or even on Heather Tito's team, she deals with this as well through MTSS, we will have a parent say, here's all this stuff from a doctor, I need you to write my IEP. And we have to then take a step back and explain to them that that is one piece of the puzzle. A parent wanting an IEP, the state statute does not allow us to give an IEP based on that. There are a lot of factors we have to look at. We are mandated by statute to utilize general education interventions first. So that is something that we have to do. That's something. Sometimes also there are students who are doing really well. I can think of a couple over the last year. The students are actually doing great, but the parent just wants that protection. So we've got, say, a first or a second grader reading on grade level, all their data, all of the data they have from their gen ed teacher shows they're doing well. They might have an outside diagnosis of something, but if there's not a need for that specially designed instruction, you're not going to get an IEP. An IEP, you have to have a disability, we have to show that response to intervention was not successful, and that there's a need for specially designed instruction. Does that answer your question, Mr. Brodsky?
It did. I just want to point out the fact that sometimes parents of a child's not successful want an additional process. Sometimes they don't qualify for that.
Yep.
You can't just make somebody into one of
Nope.
these 11 categories and say, here you go, you're in there.
Yep.
There's rules, there's processes, there's eligibility criteria. All of that is contained within the A&P manual. And that's how that works. So occasionally you'll have somebody that's upset because their child doesn't qualify for ESC services. That happens.
Yeah.
Second question. We call this the Shangri-La effect.
I love this.
Right? Have you ever had a situation where a student, perhaps a student that has some disability challenges and whatnot, is placed into a classroom and then others believe that that child shouldn't be in that classroom, it should be somewhere else? The term Shangri-La effect is a Brodskyism, by the way, there's no mistake. Everyone always believes that there's the mythical place that a child should go to where they will learn if you send them to Shangri-La. And I always point out to everybody, there is no Shangri-La, and we are Shangri-La. Has that ever happened?
That happens all the time. I mean, on a daily basis, somebody on our team is talking through a situation like that. I recognize, because I've been a teacher, I've been a general education teacher and a special education teacher, and I've been a school leader. So I know what it's like as a teacher, I know what it's like as a leader to feel like we have tried everything. We have tried everything and we just need some help. We need somebody else to help us. This kid doesn't seem to be being successful with us. We really need him to go somewhere else. But now being in the position I'm in now, I really have had to take a step back and go, oh gosh, I'm really sorry for all those times I called Terry Roth and told her that this kid needed to go somewhere else, because really, there is nowhere else. Like, we are required to serve every single student. That's what the free appropriate public education is. You know, there are different places we can serve students, but we're required to serve every one of our students. And so Mr. Broski's absolutely right. Often, and it's not because those people, whether it's a teacher or a school leader, it's not that they don't want to serve that student. Sometimes they're just overwhelmed, right? Because again, we're increasing in numbers, some of the behaviors are increasing in severity. So, you know, a class of 15 10 years ago doesn't look like a class of 15 now necessarily in some grade levels. And so, yeah, that's a thing, Mr. Broski. Absolutely.
Question number 3, have you ever had a parent that's frustrated because the child is not learning to the rate in which they expected their child to learn?
Once they're in the ESC program, absolutely we have that sometimes. I would actually say sometimes we have the opposite of that. We have where the ESC program is working and we want to lower the services because we're supposed to give the least restrictive environment. We're not supposed to have the most restrictive environment. We're required by federal law to consider the least restrictive environment. So a lot of times when we try to pull back services, we get pushback from families and from gen ed teachers, you know, because it's like, yeah, but are they going to be successful if you pull those back? Well, we're not going to know unless we try. And the whole goal in the end is for them to lead an independent life, as much of an independent life as they can. And so you've heard me say it a couple times already, I really try to, when I'm making a decision about a student or I'm problem solving about a decision about a student, I always try to think like, what is that least dangerous assumption? And if this is a decision that could change the trajectory of their life, I'm going to err on the side of caution, right? We can always add services later if they're not doing well. But yeah, Mr. Broski, we get it both ways. We get, parents who say, yeah, they're not improving fast enough. We have other parents who say, well, I hear you saying they're improving, but I don't want you to take away their services. So.
But just the fact that there's passionate people out there. You're passionate yourself about what you do, and we appreciate what you do, but there's people that are passionate, so I did a little bit of them. You realize that there's 100 passionate, super passionate people that we've all met about ESC services. Let's pretend there's 100. Mathematically, that would be 0.009%, less than 1% of folks. So the point I'd like to make is that our ESC department's doing a great job. When you look at how they compare across the state, they're doing exceptional. 21%, or a little bit more than 21% of our students are classified as ESC students. That's a huge chunk of people. Why wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that there's always going to be passionate disagreements related to children? I mean, that's going to go on forever. Just having a son who's an ESC student, I could just tell you. But there's a certain level of passion that goes with your own children, and that comes to the table. I think of no other job, right? Other service providers provide the service and they're done.
Yeah.
We have people's children, right? The passion level is huge, and it factors into these types of situations that you see bolster up. So I just like to thank Dr. Sanders and her team. They do a great job in some very difficult circumstances.
I just have a question. This might be like out in left field, but I just wanted to know this. Is it true that dyslexia is not part of a disabled or
So dyslexia in itself, the word dyslexia is not identified in the federal law, IDEA, as a separate eligibility area. But dyslexia can be served through the specific learning disability program. So it's kind of both sides are true. You know, yes, yes, IDEA does not say dyslexia, but most students with dyslexia can be, if they meet all of the other requirements for SLD, they can be served under SLD, which is usually where we serve those students, or OHI, other health impairments.
So does that mean that they have to have like a dual diagnosis of something else before, you can't just have?
Yeah, if they come in with a doctor note that says, hey, Mr. Jeremiah's got dyslexia, I need you to write him an IEP, we can't do that. We would have to go through that MTSS process with general education interventions, see about that response to the intervention, and then, depending on that, maybe do some testing of our own. And if they qualify, and I will say, a lot of students with dyslexia do qualify for a specific learning disability or some other type of processing issue that would fall under either SLD or OHI. So it's kind of not true, but and that's the thing, in ESC there's a lot of gray. So I think our favorite answer is like, it depends.
Can I ask one more question from a teacher perspective?
Sure.
I was teaching still when MTSS was instituted, and it was frustrating because there are, as you said, general ed interventions, and you do take it a step at a time.
Yep.
However, there are times when you're looking at this one child who is interrupting the entire class.
Yep.
It's very obvious that it's the one child. You have done the MTSS. It's a timing thing. MTSS takes time.
It can.
And I think just from a teacher perspective, that's probably, from a general ed perspective, probably one of the greatest frustrations when you know that. And I'm not going to label any child because that's not fair, but you know that this particular child might have some behavior problems and need additional support in a different environment or whatever.
So one thing I'd say about that, Ms. Bola, because I was also a teacher back then, right? Like, I think that not to say anything negative about any of our former administrators in our district, but Ms. Tito, under her direction, we have really upped our game with MTSS, and in the time that you're talking about, the district wasn't really providing teachers with research-based intervention materials, which is why maybe it drug out, it took too long. And we really are now, we have provided so many research-based, evidence-based materials to the schools that, A, they're working better because they're better materials. And then we're really taking a look at each individual student. So like with a situation like that, some kids do need, something a little bit different, or the process might be a little bit quicker for some kids, depending on, there's all kinds of factors. And so, anything to add to that, Ms. Tito?
No, I think you did a pretty great synopsis. I mean, ultimately, our job is to provide the service and support and make sure that we have identified the necessary interventions that students need. I will talk about, like you were specifically speaking about behavior. That's an area, like the last 3 years, and we have an amazing multidisciplinary team here at the district. We've talked about that multiple times, where we've come together really trying to problem solve, create an infrastructure, problem solving around students and what they need and what resources they need to be successful. But the area that we're really delving into right now, we've spent the last 6 months, and we're trying to coordinate. We have a lot of great people doing a lot of great work when we think about behavior. And so right now what we're doing is coordinating those efforts and trying to synchronize those together, not simplify them, but streamline them so that it's easier for students and teachers to get the supports that they need, and we're able to provide the resources to do that. But behavior is one of those things that was a problem years and years and years ago, and now it's just gotten a little more complex with how society has impacted in different ways. So we are actively working. I mean, I will tell you that we have a tremendous team. I have an MTSS supervisor who coordinates that work and partners with all departments. Right. But behavior is an area that we're working on. Academics, I'm truly proud. When we think about that work and really understanding that it's about problem solving, because if it was your child, you wouldn't want somebody just to make a blanket decision without data or interventions. to, show that you've done your due diligence. And so I am proud of that work, and we're going to continue to grow. Right now, we have 8 pilot schools for MTSS. We have 4 that are in year 2, where we were building infrastructures and support and problem solve as a team and look at data to make those decisions. And then now we have 4 more added this year with a junior high and a high school.
Awesome.
So we're working on those systems, but it takes time.
Yep.
But the most powerful slide today that Ms. Sanders, I feel, presented was that 19, where she shows that work is a coordinated effort amongst all of the district leadership.
You think about years ago, the way that ESC was treated in many respects and how it's come so far. And truly, the integration of services is amazing, so well done. Thank you.
Thank you guys for letting me share.
Yeah, Doctor, well, I just feel like the knowledge is powerful, just to kind of understand and see that. Might be helpful when you hear things in the public, you can then apply this to those situations. I especially love the Shangri-La effect. It's my favorite.
I think we should write a book for the Shangri-La effect.
Everybody wants Shangri-La, it doesn't really exist, so.
And I
Thank
think from a parent's perspective, the frustration with the time that it takes to get through this process is really rooted, I think, in the difficulty it is as a parent to watch your child struggle.
Yes.
And I think, as a society, we try to make it as easy for kids as we can, but, there's a certain amount of perseverance and grit that's built within a child when we allow that struggle to happen and ultimately lead to the best path forward. So I think, as board members, when we hear from parents, if we can just walk alongside them in that struggle and be compassionate with them, but also encourage them that this is the best route. It's hard, but it will ultimately lead to the best plan for your child.
Now, the last item on the agenda is the actual review of the agenda itself. This should take about 15 minutes. I kind of previewed it and found that there's really nothing in it leads of controversy for the board to recognize. There is no discussion items available there. Then we have the normal minutes. If there's anything there. School board out-of-county travel. This might be a discussion for the board, which is the FADS, FSBA Annual Joint Conference, December 3rd through 6th. I see the chair reached out to everybody about attending and whether you'd like to.
I also reached out to both of the candidates for my position and encouraged them to either, whichever one wins, to please keep those dates open and attend this, because as a new board member, I think it's invaluable.
Okay, the next one is managed printing services. This is actually a reduction in cost for printing. It's a renegotiation contract related to printing services. Next is the personnel consent agenda. I didn't see anything other than the normal business processes within that. And then you have elementary out-of-state travel. Then you have the amendment with Boys and Girls Club. And this was to increase the protection of the district. Boys and Girls Club, remember, is a separate entity, and we wanted to ensure that after-school events by a separate entity, as the liability is assumed by that agency. So we were asking for clarifying language to strengthen our protection as a district. That's what that's all about. Next is an agreement renewal with Clay County Fire Rescue to have EMR students go on ride-alongs with them. It's a great program there. Next is K-12 academic services, out-of-state travel, overnight travel.
There's a trip to New York in there, the theater district. Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I know.
I'm telling you.
Chaperone opportunity.
And Marvel too.
Next is adding 2 components to our professional learning catalog. In June, the board approved the big catalog. These are 2 additions to it, which include one component on students with disabilities and the others on facilitating a learning environment. Because there are additions, we're bringing them back to the board. October 23rd, the next item, October 23rd to 31st is Red Ribbon Week. It's the anti-drug message week that we have each year. Next is a ratification of Lutheran services for our SEDNet program. This is a pass-through financial aid program.
I have a question about Ribbon.
Sure.
Are we gonna team up with the sheriff's office and maybe do something like, I don't know, don't do drugs? I know we probably do stuff through the state, but I feel like we need to hit harder on.
Are you referring to like the DARE program?
Yeah, but not obviously in that week, which that would be cool if we brought something kind of like that back, but.
Well, Orange,
Yeah, we can search.
I think Orange Park still does the DARE program in the schools.
Yeah, what's the elementary one?
Just like for the, I feel like, I don't know, especially
Yeah, I
for
think
high
I
school
think we should.
and junior high.
Vaping kind of thing.
Vaping and what possibility that's in vape and with our, things being more relevant, be careful because you don't know if you're eating a Skittle or.
Of course, the fentanyl crisis is certainly something that we see, for sure. Allocation changes, not very many changes in allocations there, with changes in cafeteria assistance. Then we have deletion of certain items, it's pretty routine every month. Contract renewal for engineers, you can see the engineers that were granted contract status at the bottom there, but let's go down, there's 6 listed. Next two are prop share mitigation items. One is for 19 additional seats in elementary, and the cost there is $647,932. And that's with Bella Lago Phase 3. It's Meritage Homes of Florida. The second one is similar, and that's with Bella Lago Townhomes Phase 2, which is an additional 3 seats needed at a cost of $102,305. So they're both the same.
Is this, Lake Asbury?
Lake Asbury.
Those are Lake Asbury.
Right on Sandwich.
Okay.
Our Lake Asbury folks are
Just a planning question. Was it always planned for there to be townhomes? Or is that?
No, ma'am.
I didn't think
It goes back years. So Bella Lago original, the phase 1 was 526 homes years ago. They achieved concurrency, and then about 43 years ago, Levi Ritter, which is the developer, bought another parcel of land, and he applied for concurrency for 70-something townhomes on there. They did not achieve concurrency. They had to get a prop share for that particular, the phase 2 itself. And then, I think it was last year, there was a piece of property to the east of phase 1 that was bought by Meritage. Meritage wants to put homes there. Once again, apply for concurrency, can't achieve concurrency. I'm sure now that we're going through here. And then, there's a lot to it. And then, next to the townhomes, the developer came in and said, well, I want to add 10 more. I said, well, you can't just add 10 more. You're short seats originally in the original prop share agreement. So to do that, you're going to either have to amend the original or develop another prop share agreement. They didn't want to touch the original prop share, so they opted to go this route and just add the 3 more seats in a separate prop share agreement. So the answer to your question at first is no. They weren't all planned at once. It was phase 1 for 526 was the original plan.
And can you just say this out loud, because I know people's nerves and everybody is heightened, especially when it comes to the Lake Asbury area, and I guess it was a learning curve for me when I first got on, but I feel like the public needs to know this too, that when we run out of space per se, and they apply for this, we cannot not give them that space.
Well, we are
Through-
required by statute to offer mitigation options.
Right, and there's 3, right?
There's 3 mitigation options. They can either take the mitigation options or decline our mitigation options. 100% of the time, never seen a decline, they opt for one of the options. In other words, once they opt for an option, we cannot decline that development.
Okay, so I just want people to understand that we then have to offer the seat, whether our school is overcrowded or not, we still have to find a seat within our district for these 300 homes or 300 seats or X,
Yes,
Y,
ma'am,
Z.
that's correct.
So, then I just want to touch on this too, because this has been a hot topic. Then, and we don't have to go into detail, we can just say, per state statute, whatever. We can't just throw up schools. We have to meet certain requirements of population and other state statute requirements to be able to build a school.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I
And,
just want.
and us building a school is in response to growth.
Correct.
We don't build schools in anticipation.
Can't
of growth.
anticipate.
Correct. And I think that is the frustration with the public. They're not understanding that. They want us to have 4 or 5 schools built.
Or they don't want us to build a school because we'll bring people.
Right, or that. So I mean, it's a catch-22. But then they also have to understand, the cost of a school.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have to go down this road. I want to say it out loud so that people understand that we're not just purposely not building. We're not just purposely inviting people in and letting everybody come in, but that we have to follow a state statute and a law, and that not everything is up to us.
Right, it's a squirrely situation. And one thing that we all have to remember is we can't just build a school based on a projection. We need to make sure that that projection is coming to fruition, because we can have a long-range projection, but as we all know, and it's happened before, that economies crash. So we don't want to build a school for $60 million, having a crashed economy, and that school sits at 40%. That's not good business. That would be horrible for us to do something like that.
And also, we don't build roads.
Pardon me? No, we do not build roads, no.
Utilities or.
So I just want to say that we can be proactive, but there's only a certain point that we can be proactive.
Correct.
Until many pieces fall into place. Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
I just needed that to be said.
Okay. So next, you can see that operations have been busy. All the rest of the items are all something that's happening in the construction world within Clay County Schools. The final completion of the restrooms at Middleburg High School, the single key safety and security measure at Keystone Heights High School, the substantial and final completion of the air conditioning units at Ridgeview High School, single key initiative at Middleburg High School. Ops has been busy over there, a lot going on. Substantial completion of the single key entry for Keystone Heights High School, final completion of the air conditioning units at Lake Asbury Junior High, Clay High track improvements, contract awarded. Final completion of the HVAC and window replacement at Green Cove Junior. Pre-qualification of contractors. Rideout Elementary School classroom addition construction manager contract award for that feature on the substantial completion Lakeside Elementary's restroom. Wilkinson Junior High fire alarm replacement. Rideout Elementary Classroom Addition Architectural Contract Award. Final completion of Wilkinson Junior High fire alarm replacement. Keystone Heights concession stand. I know that they're finally getting their concession stand.
They were very happy. I talked with the people who've been emailing me for years. Thank you,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Substantial final completion S. Brian Jennings School fire alarm. Lakeside Junior High locker room renovation. Orange Park Elementary restroom renovation. And that completes the agenda, but I do have some announcements to kind of finish my section. One is you received a copy of the legislative priorities. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that back to you and say, okay, our next workshop, we need to kind of talk about legislative priorities, so we give some thought as to what you'd like to bring forward as far as legislative priorities. It's a little reminder for the October workshop. Bless you.
Thank you.
In the area of attendance, just want to say our attendance campaign, which is Attend Today, Achieve Tomorrow, you should see banners and flyers everywhere talking about attendance. We've seen some good news, some good improvement as far as the numbers are. It makes sense to me that we would track our attendance numbers quarterly. So you know the end of the first quarter is October 11th. So that would be a good time to kind of reset, look at the numbers, but you know me, I can't help but look early. little peekster on that, and we're seeing good numbers there. We're down in absences district-wide related to students. Sometimes it's a matter of just telling people, this is important, you need to do this. I was at Charles E. Bennett doing a walkthrough there of the school, and one of the things I did note was a 10-point increase in attendance. So particularly, it's important that all students attend school, let's be clear on that. But particularly students that might have difficulty learning, not being there really hurts, right? So those numbers, I would kind of make the argument there's a direct correlation between student success and physically attending school. And so looking forward to that. Right now, we do have some students, and we haven't reached the point of truancy, and I know that we're there because there's many things that happen prior to truancy. There's actually a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 step process. There are some folks close, like, they're getting there, but that would take some time to do that. Remember, there's a series of letters, a series of meetings, and there's a district hearing, like with us, meaning the school district hearing, before it would ever be referred towards truancy and a legal process for that. So that's going well. I don't know if you guys want to say anything related to attendance.
Sure, so the ball is rolling on our end with truancy court. I actually am going tomorrow to Putnam County to view an actual live truancy court, just so I have some more working knowledge of how the court process should look. And then we go all together as a big group in October to Putnam County to visit Judge Janusa's courtroom and to see the truancy court. And that's with Mr. Broski, Ms. Kelly, Guilfoyle, State Attorney's Office, the judge that's going to be presiding over truancy court here in Clay County, and then the clerk's office as well. So it's moving right along.
Sure. If any of the board members are interested in attending as well, just let us know. We'll put that on the list. So you don't have to. So.
I'd love to.
Okay, great. We'll get you the invite. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So yeah, you got to be in it to win it. So going to school is an important thing. We want people to attend school, but it's really at the school level. It's about removing barriers from people so they do attend. It's about bringing attention and advocacy to parents. At the elementary school, it's not a student decision about going to school. It's a parent decision about going to school. And so the importance of that needs to be communicated to parents. I feel good about where we're at. I think the increased attention on it will cause those that data to improve as far as student attendance. On to another topic, the internal auditor. If you recall, September 5th, the board voted and authorized superintendent to look into this particular thing. So just an update. We've obtained and reviewed the workings of multiple districts, including Broward, Collier, Escambia, Lee, Manatee, Osceola, Fulton area. And so we kind of dived into what they actually do within those districts. We particularly have gotten great response and a great partnership with Lee County, which is about 99,000 students. So they're 2 and a quarter times our size. but they were the most cooperative and willing. We've had Zoom meetings with them in order to learn their processes, etc. Related to that. We've established contact with RSM, which is the company that we talked about, in accordance with 1001.42. That's not 218.39. It seems like, based on that, the most logical way to approach this would be on a per hour basis on how they do that. RSM is a company that does this really nationally, but also within the state of Florida with school districts. So they have the most experience in doing this sort of work. And so one of the things we're working now on guidelines with the board attorney on the internal auditing committee and establishing that process through that. So we look forward to bringing more information back on that. And usually it's that committee that determines the scope of work of these areas to audit. A company, what I found is a company like RSM, because they do this so frequently and have so many experts in the field, they usually have areas that are the top areas to audit, right? And then they'll come up with the top areas. They usually have on their list, they kind of said, hey, there's 10 top areas that everybody wants to audit, and then the committee then would aid in the process of making those decisions moving forward. So we look forward to having additional information. We're supposed to have a Zoom at the end of this week with them, and look forward to bringing information to the October workshop to finalize the process.
How many people are on the, or not how many board members are on the committee?
Typically, there's one board member that's on the committee. The board can certainly in workshop discuss areas that they would like to, and then the one representative would come forward to the committee. So, my plan would be, based on what I've heard, would be to find the areas that are typically audited, bring it to the board workshop for the board to discuss, have that information ahead of time, and kind of have the discussions to the areas that they would like to audit, and then bring them forward. Let's say that there's 10 different areas that are the most common audited areas to audit in the school district. You can't audit all 10 at one time. It would be cost prohibitive, and it would actually be difficult to actually even accomplish that, from a physical standpoint, to make that happen. So then the board certainly, weigh in as to the areas that they would like to, and then the committee would need to do that. The committee, what we saw was committees were based on people with credentials to do that kind of work. For example, people that have CPAs and people that work in finance would make sense if you're doing auditing financials. That would be a logical thing to do. We look forward to bringing that to you. I just felt like, since we voted on that, I should say something about it here, like where are we going with that? So that's where we plan on going. I'd also take the time to thank Dr. Gutko's not here, but I saw my email that went out about the most recent audit from the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General from the state of Florida came in, were in our district for 8 months. They've audited dozens of areas. They came up with 3 audit findings, which in a district our size is pretty darn good. And the 3 audit findings were obviously valid audit findings, but were small in stature. They were easily corrected, and so congratulations to Dr. Legutko and the district team for that whole process. So I look forward to bringing that forward. ESC Family Engagement Night, you saw that. I'd also kind of point out that if you haven't known, there's a storm out there. Okay, so as soon as storms pop up, I start getting emails. It's kind of hysterical. I get them from students.
Yeah.
And they start early.
Do I have to study for that test?
Ms. Brodsky, I just really feel like it's too dangerous. They start to argue their case, they really do. And so I just kind of laugh. That's how I know the storm's coming. Students start to email me about taking over. So the decision to close schools is a really difficult one for me. It's probably the thing that I like least about being superintendent. We have a meeting in emergency management at 12 o'clock today. There'll be an additional discussion, but at some point a decision will be made. It looks like if that's the case, that we would have some sort of impact here in our area on Thursday and then overnight Thursday and into Friday morning. So, you know, I always get people that say, hey, we're closing schools, closing schools. The second I know, I will tell you. I'm not going to keep it. It's not a secret. I don't enjoy keeping things to myself. I will tell you. So there's no point in asking me, because I'm going to tell you as soon as it happens. So I appreciate the patience with that. It's always interesting this time of year. Very difficult because the safety of students is our #1 priority. And so when it comes to a situation in which you have to err on the side of caution, that'll always be the decision of Clay County Schools. That, however, leads to some interesting times where perhaps Friday afternoon it's bright and sunny, and then you're wondering, why did we close school? Right? Remember, we're always going to err on the side of caution with students, so more information will come out in the near future. Next board workshop, we're going to give a presentation. This will be Paul's first. Paul, raise your hand. Paul will be giving a growth presentation. We're also going to talk a little bit about how we're going to handle the growth in Lake Asbury and in Oakleaf related to the new wings that are put out in Oakleaf Junior High and Lake Asbury Junior High. So we're going to start that discussion because the goal would be for us to have final decision, final talking to the public, having meetings with the public, all that kind of stuff. We would want to have that totally finished, totally done by January, because you know, once we get back in January, we start the whole process of allocations for schools, and staffing people. So that all of that needs to be done to naturally build on how do we prepare for the next school year starting in January. So look forward to that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I know we don't have the first count until October. Do we have any and the count of the number of students that we have? Do we have any feel for, are we doing well numbers-wise, do you think? Are we going to?
So I think we're going to wind up washing. Right now, we're about 500 students less than projection. So when you do projection, you're also projecting in growth. Now, what you see happening, though, and you see this across the state, you do see sometimes parents choosing homeschool or scholarships and those types of things. I'll leave my comments there.
Good. Sounds good.
I know you asked us not to ask you this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. As far as making a decision about school closures, should we expect information about that today, or would that be a tomorrow?
I think by tonight, there will be a decision. The challenge with this storm, unlike the last storm was slow moving, a lot of rain. This is fast moving, a lot of wind. So it kind of changes the trajectory of the timing of when you would announce that. You have to, if you're going to open up a shelter, you have to announce that a little sooner in appearance than the slow-moving rain varieties. So that's kind of where we're at. So I would expect something before the end of the day tonight.
All right, we had no yellow cards. School board attorney comment?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So first I want to thank Kelly, Watt, and the staff for all the hard work in putting together the social media litigation. We had a lot of work to do, so thank you, Kelly, for all your work. I know the attorneys are still asking for more, but we'll as attorneys always do, but we'll still get through that. So you heard an update on truancy. Just real quick on the audit committee selection criteria. So we're looking at what some of the other districts have done. One of the things we want to make sure is that we find people with the right expertise. There are committees and there are selections where you are going to select people in the community that are very interested in particular areas. This is one where we don't really just want interest. We also want to make sure we're identifying expertise, and because this is a committee that's going to help provide some oversight. So it probably would not be as appropriate to put, I'm trying to think of, maybe doctors would not be the best or attorney. You really want people that have some experience in this particular area. So we'll work with you all on that. I'll have kind of some updates and briefing once we're done. In addition, so we want to make sure that we're always protecting the district and the board and our students. Florida law is changing consistently. We're getting new updates and changes, and kind of interpreting legislative intent is important. So one of the things I've been doing is working with the Sheriff's Department to make sure that, as y'all know, book challenges are a constant thing. We want to make sure that we're tightening up our procedures so that we're in compliance with Florida statute as much as possible. Y'all may get some emails about this, there might be some confusion, but the way the law is written today, it limits the type of challenges that can be made per. So, we've had some efforts to kind of circumvent that a little bit, and we want to make sure that we're in compliance and we don't attract negative legal attention, or we have someone that's suing us because we're not following the law. So that's always the worst scenario to be in, to get sued because we're not following the policies, not following the rules. So I think we have a good path going forward, but I think we have to adapt as we go because, it's an ever-changing environment. So are there any questions on any of that we can? Okay. Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. School board member comments? Anybody have anything to say?
I would like to know when is our next meeting for policy? What's their name?
Okay.
Neola. When are we doing that again for our next section?
So right now, we are actually moving well ahead of schedule, which is good. HR is working. In fact, they have an all-day session, was it just last week? Was it Friday?
It was fine. No, Thursday.
Thursday. So we are moving well ahead of schedule. We have already set times on the calendar for them to come beginning in January. Now, as of right now, and they'll be here for the full 2 days. And so they set it up so that if HR's policies are done, and they have a few hundred of them, so it's quite a bit. If they are done, then they will be ready to present and go over those policies. And so this will be the HR sections. If for whatever reason, and I think we will be done, that is our goal, then if not, then they will just continue working on them during that time. However, right now, our goal is January.
So then each board workshop, each board meeting, there would be a section related to policies.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, we're talking hundreds because Neola has, I never did the count.
Over 500.
Our policies are very thin. And now you're adding, volume to it, which is what takes time. Most districts take 18 months. We set an aggressive timeline of 12 months. And so the plan, the ultimate end thing would be that during the summertime, we would rescind all current policies and adopt all those policies that were reviewed from January to then. Because you have to have a point where you kind of flip the switch and you say, the old ones don't count anymore, the new ones count. And we're looking for that to be June. To be the time. So that's extremely aggressive. They were very complimentary at how prepared we were going into that, looking at each policy, looking at current statute, et cetera, related to it. So we feel like we're on track. And so you'll start to see that every time from January on.
And you'll get those ahead of time too, so you will get those policies before you ever come here. It will not be the first time you see it. You will get those 2 weeks ahead of time because that's kind of the turnaround time. Our goal is to finish, like HR, Brenda and her team have been working super diligently. If they get done by December, that gives Neola enough time to turn around and make sure everything looks just right, clean up any typos. And then turn around and get that to you before.
So are we gonna sit down like we did last time and go through each one? Okay. I was just wondering, because we said spring initially, and then I was like, we hadn't had a meeting in a hot minute, so I just wanted to know about that. Also, and I want to say this too, like with our PowerPoints and stuff, and maybe it's just on mine, I don't know, but the last couple of times, when you click on this for Agenda Plus, it's not attached. So, like these are
they
not
weren't attached.
attached. Sometimes, well, they used to be, when I first started, they used to be attached, but I also didn't get an email about it either. So I just wanna, I don't know if we're attaching it, if it's just, my point that I'm bringing this up is if we attach the policies or attach anything else to Agenda Plus, I don't know if something's like not happening, it's not transferring over, or we're just not doing that altogether anymore. So if we are, mine's not being attached, and then if we're not, I didn't get the email.
No, I think the email was only sent to Ms. Hanson since she wouldn't be here, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
And it's not attached, but in the workshop agenda, it did list ESC would be discussed.
Right, no, I know that, but I mean, like, if I go to like see a form, I used to click on it and that form would come up, and so I could have viewed it before I got here, is what I'm saying. That's not happening now.
That's
So
not
I don't
happening
know.
on any of your agendas?
Right,
Okay.
yes,
That, yeah, that
on
should,
even the big agenda.
Okay.
Like, it's not letting me double click for the,
Let's have Keith
yeah.
sit with you right
Okay.
after this.
Yeah.
sorry,
mine
that was
does
just a
work.
sidebar conversation, so if we're submitting these policies, I want to be able to see it. And then I only have two other things. There will be, oh God, hold on. Florida Conservative School Board Coalition is doing a convention end of January. Registration will be open October 1st, and they're teaming up with, is it SBA?
School boards for academic excellence?
Yes, that one. It'll be in Orlando for, I think, 3 days. So just a FYI if anybody wants to do that. And then a reminder, prayer at the, meet me at the poll is tomorrow. Well, somebody said I can't interfere with traffic, so.
You can join us at Seamark Ranch at 8:30 if you'd like a later time.
I'll give you for you some coffee.
I will already have a couple of cups more.
No, I'm good. And then that's it.
Can I ask Mrs. Skinner? The Florida Conservative Coalition, do you know how much that will be? Anything over 500 for a board member should be approved by the board? I can get that on the October
I think it'll
agenda.
come out October 1st.
So we don't
because
know
it's,
just yet. Okay.
I think there's going to be maybe some, I'll look right here and see if I can find it too, but I think there's going to be, I think they're trying to, some costs might be covered, is what they're trying to figure out, so that, I don't know if all or if some.
Okay.
So I
So
will
once
let
we
you
know
know
more,
as soon as
we'll-
I find out, but it's the 22nd through the 24th, I do know.
So there would be hotels involved as well. It'll probably,
That'll probably be north of 500.
yeah, I think so.
So, I'll let you know all the details.
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
I just know the date and,
Would they cover the cost of hotel?
it depends. It depends on, I don't know, on sponsorship and whatnot, I don't know. We'll find out, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, Orlando's not as cheap as it used to be. Bonnie,
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have, I'm sure it's out there, and I haven't seen it, the 2 dates for our school board meetings in November?
The 2 dates, so
So
we'll
we
have
won't-
our regular
I don't think
meeting.
we'll get that until we have our reorganizational meeting.
Okay,
Correct.
all right.
And
The 2 dates for the school board meeting in November, you have the 7th, which is our first school, the school board meeting. And the date definite is 2 weeks following the election, which would be the
November
19th.
19th.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
That's
So
the
it would be the
swearing in.
19th, and I'm assuming at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Because
that
that's,
The 19th is the
I would
reorganization.
assume it's at 6 PM. It is not Thanksgiving weekend.
No.
I will not be here for that meeting. Somebody else will be here. I'll be on the cruise.
Well, I wanted to say, welcome to Glee. Listen for joining us this morning. It's great to have you. So, and I wanted to give a shout out to Constance Higginbotham for the literacy program. She went to great lengths. I still thought it was a success. I know she was hoping for more, but I think she did wonderfully well. Had 43 vendors there, auctions and silent auctions, and it was fun.
anyway.
It was.
But, I also want to say thank you to the ESC, everybody involved with ESC. I think as parents, when things happen, we tend to blame ourselves. What did we do wrong? But I remember, that was one of my goals for running, was to, because I'd heard all sorts of stories about how admin had made cuts to that department. And it was so important, especially with the military, because it's not just parents talking, but it's the fact that it was my understanding that the military, you had 2 counties in the whole nation, that if your child had an issue, Clay was one of the 2 that you were told to go to. So we've had great success, and it's nice to see that we're back up on that mountaintop. So thank you. And that's it.
Just dittoing on Ms. Clark's comments about Saturday. My grandsons were there, and at 9, and said, thank you for being patient with us. But I was there to represent the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. We had a table there. But it was the Orange Park Women's Club and also the Clay Retired. There were a lot of people from both organizations there as well. And not a lot of students, and there were some ideas of what we can do to beef up the attendance in the future. But my grandsons had a blast. I mean, they got books, they got supplies, at one point, I have to admit, I did take some electronics because I was going to be there for a couple of hours. And when the switch ran out, the books came out. And so just to comment, keep those books coming out at home, gang, because it definitely makes a difference. On another point, and maybe Mr. Boyack, I'm just going to mention this. We are very conscious of keeping everyone on our campuses safe, most definitely. We do run into periodically some outrageous behavior, unfortunately, from parents. And when those parents make our teachers feel uncomfortable, I hope that we can be more aware of when that happens. I know that all of the information doesn't always float to the top, because the principal generally takes care of anything that happens at the school. And we're all very much thankful for those principals, because they truly do give the support that's needed for those individuals. But at any point, if we should hear of the teacher's name, a follow-up call from someone just to say, hey, we know you had to deal with a parent and deal with a situation today that was totally uncomfortable. Make sure that they're okay. Make sure that we know that they're okay. Because, when you get yelled at by a parent, whether it's your parent or not, and 9 times out of 10, it is not a child in your classroom. I have been yelled at by parents, and it rests right there. I will always remember that. I remember the good parents more so, but those situations where that person came into my face, and you're wondering why me, why, how do I handle this? But you handle it as the professional that you are. And just saying this to teachers, thank you for being the professionals that you are, because it can be tough. There are a lot of frustrations that we don't know what those parents are dealing with as they drive up to pick up a child, or walk their child to school or whatever. And the fact that we do have to do certain duties because we need the personnel out there, it's helpful to have a little bit of backup, just hey, hope you're doing well today, and I know this happened last week and we're sorry it happened, but if you hear of those things, it's sort of, if we hear of something, let's say something back to those individuals as well. So thank you. That's it.
Okay. Ms. Hanson, was there anything you wanted to add?
I think she's gone.
Oh, is she off the call? Okay. All right, this meeting's adjourned.